GCSE Drama Component 2 top tips for performance from text at a distance. My name is Ruth Gibbs. I am the Principal Examiner for Component. This support session is being recorded on the 24th of September 2020. The information provided outlines the confirmed approved changes from the DFE and Ofqual to the requirements of qualification. In addition, you can find information on our website on all pages in the top right hand corner labelled COVID-19 update. As Principal Examiner and a GCSE Drama teacher myself, I really do understand the challenges faced by all teachers at this difficult time, and in particular the unique challenges that are posed for us drama teachers and students. So the purpose of this session is not to offer training, but more to share the ideas and guidance that we as the drama teachers may need to use to approach the new challenges of preparing our students for performance from text, collaborating in groups and performing for a live audience, all while maintaining the social distancing and hygiene guidelines. So the aims and objectives of this support material are to recap on the demands of Component 2 and any changes to the delivery, assessment and requirements for this exam series 2021, to consider the practical ideas for the rehearsal and performance of text for GCSE Component 2 in light of the social distancing requirements, to consider any common issues, FAQs, the administration, and then just to point you towards the further support material available. Component 2 is an externally assessed component worth 20% of the qualification. There are 48 marks in total available, and the AO2 assessment objective is to apply theatrical skills to realise artistic intention in live performance. In light of the reduced time available due to lockdown, students are required to perform or design in one extract only this year. The one examined extract will be assessed out of 24 marks, and that will then be doubled, scaled to the normal 48 mark total. There are also new regulatory minimum timings in place for all performance routes, and therefore the penalty tables have been changed to reflect these new minimum timings. An audience can be a small live or virtual live streamed one, but must include the teacher. There is a new process in place for designers who aren't able to realise their design actually in the performance this year. This component will be assessed by an examiner via recorded evidence this year, rather than examiners actually going into centres. Not changed are the performance options. So you've still got the monologue, duologue, group of 3 or 4, group of 5 or 6, and again, unchanged are the design options. So set, costume, lighting, sound. You can have up to one designer per design role for any monologue, duologue or group extract, with the maximum of 4 design students attached to any one extract. To remove the risks posed to students, staff and audiences by examiners actually going into centres, there's the suspension of marking, as I said, by visiting examiner for 2021. So all centres are required to provide an audio-visual recording for all examined students of Component 2 on one key extract performance for external examination. Centres can be reassured that all examiners are trained to mark on recording, and the application of the AO2 criteria will be absolutely applied as normal. So there are tips for making a good recording. Please refer to Appendix 4 in the specification for guidance on best practice. All recordings must please be complete and unedited for each performance. Make sure the camera is positioned to ensure the best possible and unobstructed recording is made of the performance, just as it would be seen by the examiner live. So panning and zooming shouldn't be used. Each student should introduce themselves clearly at the start of the recording. It's very clearly outlined in the ASG what they need to say and how best to do that. It's also supportive really supportive this year to the assessment process to make the identification on the recording as clear as possible for the examiners. So by no means must you do this, but it would be very helpful if you could please consider providing any of the following. Students holding up A4 sheets to the camera in the introduction, stating their student name and number in a large font that can be seen obviously on the recording. Possibly providing full-length group photographs or a static shot, a sort of photograph of students, and again in the costume that they actually are appearing in the recording would be very helpful. Alternatively, a labelled screenshot in exactly the same way of the students as they appear in performance is very helpful for the examiners in identifying them on those recordings that you send through for assessment. If students are working remotely this year, they are required to perform the work live to the audience on a platform such as Zoom. The teacher must be present and that session recorded. There will be a new recording information sheet for 2021. This will be updated and available on the website. Please make sure that you use this 2021 recording information sheet, and obviously this will replace the obsolete postal forms that you would have used if you were sending your pack postally to an examiner. The file types for the recording that you send must be compatible for Windows and Mac devices, and files formatted in the correct format as requested by Pearson. The labelling of the files is listed below. This is also very clearly outlined in the ASG. Please make sure you pay even more careful reference to the labelling of those files for this exam series, so that when examiners are receiving your recording, they are very easily able to access and know exactly who is who, and it's labelled very clearly as they go through each candidate for the assessment. Administration this year, please complete the Component 2 text list for contrast with the Component 3, just as you would normally. The details of your allocated examiner and where to send the work to is going to be provided to you during the assessment window. So just hold on, you will wait from Pearson, hear from Pearson as to where to send that work, who your examiner is. As the assessment is going to be carried out on recording and provided for assessment electronically, as I said, there will be the simplification of those postal forms that we normally use into the new sort of simple form for the recording information. So please do make sure that you use that correct form when you are scanning and sending off your pack. Please use accurate detail of the student's appearance on that form. The extracts and intention of communication must also be sent through, so that will need to be collated and scanned together in the sequential group order. So for each group performance, saved and then separately labelled on files in the group order, so it can be very easily accessed by the examiner as they go through each of the performances. They can also look at those extracts and intention of communication that relate to the performance. When you're scanning, as well as labelling the actual file on that group of extracts and intention of communication, it's also important to make sure that the student name and the student number, the candidate number, is also written on those, so that they can make sure that they're looking at the correct ones with the correct performance or design. When you are scanning in the extracts for monologues, duologues and small groups, obviously if these are under 10 minutes, then only the actual extract that is being performed for the assessment need be scanned in. You don't need to scan in the entire 10-minute extract for study that specification requires the student to study. It's just that extract that is being performed that will need to be scanned in and sent off. We will confirm for you the details of how you will submit your work for examination in the coming months. If you do conduct the exam this term or next term, please do follow the recording instructions provided in this presentation and in the ASG. Keep all of that work secure until you are provided with that further information. So the performance focus and audience for 2021. For Component 2, the requirement is to perform in front of a live audience. This has been amended to allow for both live and virtual audiences. So this means students can perform live or virtually in front of a small audience to include their teacher or just to the teacher. The teacher must obviously be present to authenticate the work of the students. There's also the requirement to record performances. There is no requirement for final performances to be done with a full design of set, lighting, costumes if the performance students aren't working with the designer. Students should perform to the chosen audience and not to the camera. They should be reminded that the performance must be theatrical, it's not for screen. The chosen audience is up to the discretion of the centre, with mindful adherence, obviously, to social distancing. To maintain social distancing rules this year, it might be advisable to consider smaller performance group working group sizes, working groups of 3 and 4 maybe rather than 5 or 6. Or you may also opt to choose for monologues or duologue performances for ease of social distancing. However, it's really recommended to carefully consider, is this the most suitable pathway for all of your students individually? Mindful selection of appropriate texts and extracts that can maintain social distancing for a small group might be more supportive for some students rather than them doing a monologue, for example. The same message is applicable for the design pathway, and students should always be steered onto the option for assessment that is best suited to them. Here are the timings for the monologue and duologue requirements, showing the new regulatory minimum performance time. So in light of the reduced preparation time available due to the lockdown, they have been reduced. So the monologue regulatory timing is now 1.5 minutes, and the minimum regulatory duologue performance time is 2 minutes. Anything under this regulatory timing will result in a proportional time penalty. Examiners, as normal, are required to stop marking after the maximum performance time has passed. So as normal, the recommendation for students is to try to hit that timing in between that minimum and maximum performance time. And then anything underneath that regulatory minimum is a real no-no, because that's where the penalty sort of kicks in. So here are the timings for the group requirements. So here for the groups, we've got the new for 2021 reduction of the regulatory minimum. So it's 2 minutes for any group performance. So anything under that 2 minutes obviously is going to result in that proportional time penalty. And there you have that recommended minimum and maximum performance time is where you are aiming to get the students to. The timing penalties are available for you to see in the ASG. If a design student this year is not going to be able to realise their design actually in the performance, we are accepting any rehearsal recordings or any other evidence that the student feels that they can help to determine how their design would have worked had they been able to actually fulfil it in the performance. So with this, we expect to see some form of realisation of the design. It might be in the form of a recorded or written presentation explaining the intended design and what had been realised, or it might include visual evidence such as photographs or visual recordings. So some sort of examples of these might be for costume, with hair and sort of mask or makeup if applicable. If they haven't actually been able to realise it during the live performance, it could then, the costume could be displayed on a, even a family member at home if they were self-isolating, and evidence through sort of any photographs or visual recordings. As a lighting designer, we would expect to see that lighting implemented either during the performance or a visual recording of the cue to cue sort of lighting states. As set designer, we would expect to see the set is actually built within the centre and the evidence of the staging sent to the examiner, so photographs of it, a visual recording of it, even if it wasn't actually used during the live performance. There would be an indication perhaps of how the performance entrances and exits, so the examiner could see how that actual set was intended to work during the performance for the actors, even if it wasn't actually used. Sound designer, again, we would expect to hear the sound being implemented during performance or a cue to cue operation. Students could possibly submit a soundscape or recording of the sound effects of what they intended to do. So the intention of communication, how that can actually be used this year to help support communicate the students' intentions to the examiner. We have the performance questions here, and then the designers' questions. So, to really encourage your students this year to use this intentional communication to highlight any specific points in their performance or design that they would like to the examiner. It might give them the opportunity to highlight any challenges that they've faced along the way when performing and preparing their performance from text, or highlighting any moments of strength to the examiner as well. Just as a reminder, the intentional communication does not form part of the assessment for the AO2. Students may have faced challenges in terms of thinking differently and creatively due to social distancing, and this might be something that they may have struggled with, and it may help them to outline that in their communication and to let the examiner know how they originally wanted to intend to communicate and how they've ended up actually interpreting it for their final performance. Students must perform to the live audience and not the camera. So just to remind them of that, it is about the theatricality. It's not about sort of performance for film. So to again outline if they've found any challenges with that in that intention of communication. So there are some sort of teaching tips here from Open Drama UK that we've all had a few weeks now of getting used to, trying to sort of do the practical work in the space. I say all of us, some of us may still be in classrooms, but when we do get into the space to start to rehearse the component two, these are the types of things that we're going to have to be very mindful of. So not sharing resources such as props, keeping doors and windows open, only allowing certain students in at a certain amount of time. But keeping everything as simple as you possibly can. It's about the bare bones acting really anyway, component two. So just calming students' anxieties of any props, costumes, things like that. If there isn't a designer attached, it really is a good idea. Keep those to a minimum, so that cleaning down of surfaces or anything that is being used is kept very minimal and risks very minimal after each rehearsal session. Consideration should be given to the style, proxemics, physicality of performance to support that performance from a distance. So there are many, many texts and extracts that can be delivered in a style which accommodates social distancing. So whilst monologues are an obvious choice, duologues, small groups, they could still be performed with distancing measures in place. So taking that careful selection of the appropriate text and extract is going to support the students this year. So considering style, which incorporates maybe an episodic rather than a more narrative and realistic style, giving that opportunity for split stage, monologue, duologue sequences within a small group extract. So, for example, Cartwright, Berthkoff's work, themes that may lend themselves to distance or separate characters. So, again, as an example to you, chat room, the effect, a talk in the park, possibly using site-specific theatre, so even taking it outside if that is possible, although possibly not during the winter term as we approach. Peterborough's empty space style of theatre, opportunities offered for the text by techniques using their own space, so talking directly to the audience, you know, direct address. For example, aside, Shakespeare obviously lends itself very well to that. Mark Wheeler's work, you know, where you've got the narrative and the movement sequences that are more symbolic, the verbatim speech, with a didactic approach maybe, multi-rolling, sort of teachers, or Greek theatre, where the focus is on the choral work or Greek choral movement, obviously with that repetition of movement and gesture, with social distancing to enable them to do that. You've got text written in the collective voice, for example, adult child, dead child, so enabling the spotlight to be on one student at a time with a socially distanced ensemble sort of abstract work on the split stage. And again, if you are choosing monologues or for students, choosing something such as, you know, a text that was intended for monologue in the first place. So, for example, Ella Hickson, Sarah Kane, etc. Could be, you know, make your life easier as your teacher, finding those monologues and making sure that the cut is correct for the extract. There were also, during lockdown, you know, we all enjoyed watching lots of theatre streamed online, and things such as Alan Bennett's Talking Heads, you know, using exemplar material to show students, you know, this can be done, we can get through this. The professionals have led the way and get them inspired that way. So they should really be encouraged to work with limitations upon the set, props, costume to minimise the contamination, using techniques to create setting and develop characterisation. So levels, use of space, different, you know, parts of the stage for different locations, time zones, obviously enables that social distancing. Companies such as Frantic Assembly have been, you know, fantastic in the last few months, you know, putting on their website and offering sort of teacher training for supportive ideas on how to use their techniques with social distancing measures. You know, movement, motif work that is either solo or distanced. And again, if students are, you know, sorrowful that they can't create the naturalistic setting that they would have wanted to, then maybe suggesting the use of media, projections, audio, video work to create that setting, if that is something that they are wanting to do, rather than using actual physical set and props that would then obviously have that risk of contamination. So text and extract choice. I would like to highlight that in no way are the aforementioned texts any purpose of recommendation. They're solely provided to try to support centres in, you know, sourcing appropriate text to contain suitable extracts for this year. So there is a link to the list of plays, suggested sort of plays to use on the website. The link is here, but you can look on the website and you'll find that playlist there. We also have here from the PE report, there obviously wasn't one for 2020, but if you look at the 2019, this is an extract from it here, where you've got a list of popular texts that we use for monologues during that series. There are also some examples of where the required length had been extracted from specific texts that were that offered particular types of opportunity, and duologues, and then sort of group extracts. So hopefully, if you're struggling for you know, ideas for text, that may give you some inspiration. So socially distanced work for design candidates, sound and lighting designers. It's all a bit more straightforward in terms of obviously social distancing. Just make sure that everything is appropriately cleaned, antibacterial wipes, etc. Set designs, consideration needs to be used. If there are any props, then very carefully how they should be shared and stored. Projections are obviously going to be supportive. Something such as a sort of simple painted flat, for example. Costume designers, it's you know, good idea to perhaps use family members, or you know, in the costume designers sort of bubble, to actually take the take the sort of task of actually sort of showing the costume. Costume should be washed in school, or kept sort of at home when used by the performer. Theatrical masks, again, obviously mustn't be shared, and if they are going to be used, then they need to be cleaned very thoroughly. And then any makeup or hair designs as part of the costume should be designed by the design candidate, but actually applied by the performer under the instruction of the design candidate. So here's the design student's additional documentation, just for reference for you. So further support and questions. Here are the details for Paul Webster, your subject advisor. If you haven't signed up to Paul's subject page, please do so. You can follow the embedded link here. Any specific questions about Component 2 and the delivery of it this year, or just any general questions, please use Ask the Expert, which you'll find the link to here, or you can go onto the website to find that link. So just finally, obviously we are all in this very challenging time. Please do use that Ask the Expert for any question whatsoever. We're all here as a drama community to help share ideas and to support each other. So please do take my very best wishes to you and your students in terms of selecting preparing the performance for text for 2021.